in 2022, what we had globally for gold mine supply was an increase of 1%. So that took total global gold mine supply to 3,614 tons. Now that growth largely came from China. So what happened in China in the previous year, there were a couple of fatal mining accidents, unfortunately, in Shandong province. And this led to a number of mines being closed down while safety inspections happened. So 2021, we had a drop in Chinese output. Then moving on to 2022, that was resolved, those mines were back up to full production, and therefore we had a rebound in output in China. And that's what drove growth globally. China's the biggest gold producer, so therefore that was an important factor. Offsetting that to some degree was lower outputs we're expecting from Russia. Obviously with the conflict starting in Ukraine, that led to sanctions and some companies were forced to exit. For instance, Kinross shut down their Kupol mine temporarily and then sold that asset. And then Petropavlovsk went into administration because of financial implications, basically, of the sanctions. And then also here in South Africa, we had obviously the strikes at Sibanye, and that led to around a 10% drop in South African output. So you did have some countries with lower production, but that rise in Chinese output really offset that and led to that 1% growth in production in 2022. The war in Ukraine obviously led to those sanctions, which I mentioned, and that had some impact on immediate supply. As I mentioned, the examples of Kinross exiting and Kupol, Petropavlovsk. But those sanctions are also leading to difficulties for miners operating in Russia getting financing from Western sources, but also equipment from Western sources. And what that's leading to is delays in projects. So those are being pushed back by a year or two because of those sanctions. So that obviously is having an impact. But it's not just limited to what's happening in Russia. Another example is what's happening in Peru at the moment. So there's widespread protests there. That's leading to mines being temporarily closed for safety reasons. And that will impact gold output, not just from primary gold mines, but there's obviously a lot of copper mines in Peru, for example, and they're producing gold as a byproduct. So that's having an impact as well. For 2023, we're expecting growth of 3% year on year. So that will take global outputs of 3,730 tons. Now this growth is going to come from a number of countries, but regionally, we're expecting the biggest growth in North America, followed by Central and South America. So in North America, that's largely going to come from Canada, where we've got a number of new projects coming online, but also brownfield expansions at existing mines. In Central and South America, one of the biggest drivers in terms of countries will actually be Chile. It's all renowned for copper output, but Goldfields are bringing Solares Norte online, so that's going to drive gold output. But also Kinross brought online La Cuapa last year, and that's ramping up. So that will drive output in Chile. So that's where the growth is going to come from, basically. In Africa, we're expecting 997 tons of gold production in 2023. That works out to around 1% growth year on year. Now that's going to come from, in terms of growth, the two biggest producers. So in Ghana, we're expecting growth there from existing mines. So for example, Anglo Gold Ashanti's Obuasi is ramping up production. Also Newmont's Ahafo, we're expecting higher grades. We've also had the project Bibiani, which came online this year. So all of those three combined, alongside some others, that's going to contribute to pushing Ghanaian production to around 154 tons we're expecting. And then here in South Africa, I mentioned earlier about the strikes at Sibanye. So we're expecting steady production this year. There's been no strikes so far, and hopefully that continues. And if that persists throughout the year, we'll have around 8% growth in production in South Africa. So those two countries will remain the biggest producers. So Ghana followed by South Africa. So those are going to be the ones contributing to growth in Africa as a whole. There will be some countries with lower output, particularly in other West African countries, just due to grade declines, reserve depletion, etc. But overall, that 1% growth to 997 tonnes.